from emotional. I've been through,
Right.
especially, I've been through a couple of real serious health issues. The two that no one wants, heart attack and cancer.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, that makes you, that's why my drawings are about time. Especially when you get into your 60s and you've had that, time makes a difference. Well, I mean, our whole lives are governed by time too. I mean, that's another sort of outside thing. But time and letting any sort of current situation drive the work as well. It always has, actually. Like my early work had children in it because we had young kids. I mean, my work has always been about my life, and it comes from within. I don't really look at too many outside sources. I mean, I'm influenced by everything and nothing at the same time.
Right.
I inherited from my mother a ridiculously observant eye, where I cannot see things.
Right.
That was my mother. I mean, even until after my father passed away, and I was going with her to get a new Cadillac, and I said, well, this one, I like this one because I like the wheels. She goes, yeah, I noticed that. I did too. And that's when I first realized, but if you're driving down the street with her, she's just telling you everything. So I finally realized, here in my old age, I got that from her.
Right.
And then from my father, a real acute sense of what Janet mentioned about being aware of what people are really thinking, as well as, from what they're saying. Because I could always tell, no matter what I said to my father, he really knew the truth.
Right.
And he knew that from when I'd bring people over, he would, he wasn't real overt about saying these things, but I know it. So I feel that I got those two things working together.
Right.
Which sometimes makes it a little difficult, but at least I have a way to.
Sure. Well, your
make
dad
them
was
visual.
in a job where he had to deal with people every day.
Yeah.
And
he didn't like it.
Right.
He could not stand being a dentist. And if he kept telling to us, or not telling to us, that's really bad language. delete. No, I remember him saying he hated being a dentist and he wouldn't recommend it to his worst enemy. And so here I could have walked into this amazing practice.
So what did he hate? Was it the people, or was it just
dentists? There's a lot of
medical billing, and
there's a lot of suicide in in the dental profession. It was the most suicide for a while. Yeah,
I always thought it was lawyers.
No, it was dentists. For a long
I've
time.
known I had I'd worked with lawyers before who were active members of the Depressed Lawyers club in Dallas, and
there's a lot of drinking in law.
Yeah, and there's I think there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of moral conflict.
Well, yes.
That they're always torn, whether or not something is right or wrong has nothing to do with whether or not it's legal. And there's this constantly trying to question, struggling with your values and all the drinking and hours and hours and hours and whatever. It kind of leads to that. But
I don't know what it was about dentists, but they did have a high suicide rate. I don't know about it anymore because my father wasn't making the type of money that dentists make today. Yes, we had a nice middle class, upper middle, and semi upper middle class existence. But I don't know. I would say putting your hands in people's mouths all day. Most people don't like you because they hate coming to your office, but most dentists are very sweet, nice people, and they kind of have to have that personality.
Right.
And he was extremely generous and one of the sweetest people I ever knew. And I mean, that would be my opinion of why I would want to be a dentist, you know.
But being a dentist is a little bit of, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, he's a self-owned business.
Yes, my family, I mean, again, I've never really worked for anyone.
Right.
I even had my own camera shop after college.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. I mean, I feel like
it's a mentality from throughout the whole family. I mean, basically, on my father's side were dentists and doctors. On my mother's side, I just knew my grandparents. The other ones I didn't really know. I mean, we were around them, but I'm not a real. I mean, it's 100% Italian family, but I'm not a real close. I'm real close to my family, but the people outside, sort of the fringe people, we'd only saw like once a year, twice, funerals and weddings, basically. Right. So I'm not real sure what they did. I do know that one of my great aunts was a seamstress and costume maker.
Wow.
So there's a lot of creative side. Mm-hmm. Supposedly the great-grandfather that made the family move to Texas moved them to Waco because he made lace. So there's that stuff, all the hand-eye coordination stuff. One thing about my father that he enjoyed more than anything was making false teeth. Because that was sort of the creative part of dentistry. And he'd come home with like these gold rings that he made with dental gold and stuff. So
that's awesome. Everyone
liked making things. My mother is actually a really, really good artist. I have one of my favorite pieces of art I own is from Alexander Hogue. Gave her a piece. She went to Hockaday when it was a junior college.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said.
I had no idea that Hockaday was ever.
And we have a letter from Alexander Hogue, or from I forgot Miss Hockaday's first name, but either from Alexander Hogue saying that for this student contest, I know we're supposed to give one award for this, but Nancy Nicosia or Magnolia, her name was my grandparents' maiden name was Magnolia. My mother's maiden name was Magnolia.
Wow.
My grandparents were Magnolia. I know. And from Waco.
So I'm wondering who would have thought?
Yeah. I'm wondering about Chip and Joe.
I know. They appropriated the family name.
The family name. Exactly. And it's funny, Chip and Joe. Who doesn't, right?
Right.
Anyway, Nancy Magnolia should also win this. And so he gave her a piece. And so we have it. It's one of my favorite things. And she also was offered a full scholarship at SMU, but turned it down. I think she was probably getting married at that time. I'm not really sure why. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was my family background. That's who made us.
Right.
I mean, my kids make. Everyone kind of makes me. I made this little piece that was in every one of my. It wasn't in the absence of others. It was in the next series called Stories, and that little figure and. Basically, it's who the people who made me, my wife, my kids, my parents. And that's who kind of you get developed from.
Right. And so at some point around late 60s, you wind up going to Denton, which must have seemed like the middle of nowhere.
Well, no, 69, it was not. It was actually... it was at a time of a lot of Vietnam protest, and North Texas was getting a lot of press for being one of those. Uh-huh. And I don't know why I didn't go to another college. I can't really explain that. Could have been my grades. I didn't have very good high school grades. It could have been because a few friends were going. My closest friend was going from high school. We were going to be roommates. I do remember one night we were all sitting around at a friend's house looking through books of colleges, and we were looking for the number one party schools. Yeah, that's where we were. It wasn't as ambitious as it became later.
Right.
Like 5 years later, school became, people became ambitious.
Right.
We were just going to college to stay out of the war, for one.
Right.
And to have a really good time.
Sure.
I didn't know what I wanted to be. There were some students in my high school that knew they wanted to be lawyers or knew they wanted to be certain things. We just wanted to go, so I just went to North Texas.
It's so different now. It's so competitive.
It is. It's totally competitive.
Well, now. I mean, I can only speak for my generation, but I know even in my generation, going and getting a college degree, hey, that's going to set you apart from those those kids that only have their high school diploma.
Right.
Well, nowadays, that's to be said about whether you get an MBA or whatever. Hey, that's going to set you apart from that 90% that's just getting a college degree, right?
Right.
And so now everyone has to take it really seriously because it's ultra competitive to try. My highest performing students that have never gotten anything less than 100% on all they do still can't get into the schools they want to go to.
No,
because they're you think about all how many schools there are in the U.S. and every valedictorian wants to go to Harvard or MIT or Caltech.
Yeah, but the thing
Stanford. And it's just like, there aren't enough spots to enable
No, there's not. And I know that gives them a one-up on people. But my thing is, you get out of it what you want to get out of it.
Right.
I wasn't even in the art department. I had my first solo show in New York 2 years after I...
Right.
People... I don't know, there's other stories like that. I mean... I was in Whitney Biennial. I only made 15 pieces of art in my entire life. In 1983, I was in several museums. That's why I didn't finish graduate school. I was in 8 museum shows after my second semester.
Sure.
So it just...
But all right, so let's talk about how you get...
At it,
yeah, so let's talk about how you get from Jesuit to North Texas State in what is the radio TV and film. Was Bill Mercer in the program back then, or...
I think Bill Mercer did teach. I think I had him for speech.
Right.
And I was terrible at it. I didn't want to be. As a matter of fact, on my 1 hour a week radio show I had to have as a requirement, I said I didn't ever utter one word. I put on In the Gata de Vida, which lasted 40 minutes?
Right.
And then that was it.
Right.
Basically a couple of commercials for North Texas or whatever it was, and I'm out. I played like 3 really, really long songs. I was terrified of speaking in the mic. I regret that now, of course. But I'm telling you, my confidence was 0 in college.
So what changed?
The TV camera I got behind changed everything. I even wrote, I know I keep telling these sort of funny stories, but let me just tell you. Okay, for our final project, I had to write a sitcom script for class. I wrote a script where 2 guys lived with a girl. They were roommates. Okay, I don't know where that script is. It completely disappeared. And about 2 years later, what was it?
Three's Company?
Yeah, Three's Company showed up. And this happened to me with that's realities show I was telling you about.
Right.
And I know we're kind of off track here, but it's a
okay.
funny story.
Right, it's artists that are listening to this anyway.
Okay, yeah, they're not.
So there's nothing linear.
They're already out. They're all they're ADD completely out by now. But okay, my reality show. The producer I was working with, she was a real producer. I'm not going to mention any names in all this because there's no point.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. She said, okay, look, if you want to use Father Knows Best, we need to find out how to get the rights to that. So she says, look, it's actually Sony TV. So we need to contact them. So I contact Sony TV. How the hell I did that, I have no idea. But I get someone on the phone. And the woman goes, okay, that's fine. We'll have to... Excuse me. She goes, send me a synopsis, and I don't know, there was something else that had to come along with it. And we already had the copyright of the whole TV show. I get a phone call on my cell phone, like 2 days later, and she says, I'm sorry, we cannot grant you rights to Father Knows.